We've got that recording. So on a scale of goats, how are y'all feeling? A lot going on. All the protests going on over the weekend. I don't know if any of you participated in those or saw what was happening. People who are exercising their right to have a voice. Which of these goats are speaking to you? I didn't number them, I'm sorry. So feel free to describe as you see. The fainting goat. Have you guys seen those fainting goats? Like watch the videos on loop. They're so good. Bottom center. Guy in the blue. You feel like the guy, not the goat. Oh, goat yoga is a thing where goats climb on you while you're doing yoga. Has anyone ever done those? Oh, Kristen, in Montana, you guys had a good turnout for hands off. That's cool. We hope that you are taking some time for yourselves, understanding where your balance is. I know that I have not had balance in the last couple of weeks, and I'm just trying to make it through spring. But we do have a session that we did last spring about wellness and understanding your needs and finding them. So we recommend that for anybody who's feeling really overwhelmed right now. There's some good practice that we put into that session. All right, let's move on. Next slide. So our agenda, we're going to have a breakout early on. We're going to start with a breakout where we're really curious about what all of you think about when you think of change. This is where people with same ideals tend to split into different places on different paths and how we think changing from one thing to another happens and what it takes to get there. And so we're really curious collectively as those of us in grant work or fund development or nonprofit work where we think change happens, how we think change happens, and what our role in that is. We're going to have a Q&A session with Heather Hiscox. We're really excited about that. And then our second breakout, we have a project we're working on, and we'd love your input. We're drafting letters to philanthropy, and we would love for all of you to share with us your feedback on those before we put them out widely. And then we'll give you an update on some stuff we're working on for the summer. Okay, so in our breakout rooms, we will just sort you into different rooms with a handful of people. Introduce yourself, where you're based, if there's something you want to share, with the prompt of, do you think of yourself as a change agent? What are the limitations in your work, professional, personal spheres? Are you driven by things that can be changed for good, or does change make you feel uncomfortable or powerless? We talk a lot as grant professionals, as fund development professionals, as nonprofit professionals, and understanding that there are barriers and there's gatekeepers, and we don't necessarily have access to the power required to make real change happen. And so we're curious where you all come into this space thinking about where change comes from and who's participating in it, so that hopefully can be a rousing conversation in your room. So we'll get those breakout rooms open, and then we'll come back. I think we have what, maybe 7 or so minutes. I forget what's on the agenda, but we'll bring you back after a little bit of time to get into the Q&A session. If anybody isn't seeing the rooms that are open, let us know. Happy to help with that. I see people joining. Welcome back. Okay, so any insights? We'll just do this really informally. We don't have a slide to capture input, but I really would love to hear if there was anything that came out in conversation in your groups that anybody would like to share, or curious if we all kind of lean in the same direction, or if we really have very different thoughts and perspectives about change. Who's a change doesn't scare me, I'm totally cool going with it. Usually the one leading it. Pro change. Hate personal change. Yeah, I hear you, Megan. Love change. When I think about having to change, to incorporate something new, to do something different, to alter my current experience, it gives me heart palpitations. Who's on that end? Neurodiversity adds another layer, you bet. Oh, wow. That's a good point. Fake it till we make it. Changes on my resume. All right. Yeah. So like also recognizing when we're at our best to think about these sorts of things, to participate in these things, we definitely are sharper at more times than another. Love change. Change is great. If we're choosing it and not forced on us. In your everyday, how much of your day feels like you are directing it, and how much of your day feels like you're responding to it? Change is inevitable. %99 response, 1% plan. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. Most of us feel like we're just responding to things rather than having the power to direct. We feel that in our life, in our jobs. A little draining, maybe. Make change happen on my terms. I like change. I'm really good at designing and creating structures and systems, but I'm also the first one to break out of them. And so that's an interesting thing that I work on. But then there's certain things that like I will never change up my routine in the shower, right? The order in which I accomplish washing my face, washing my hair. It would be bizarre to change that. It would be really weird, but everything else in my life, let it fly. Okay, thanks. Well, thanks for sharing. We really appreciate that. I hope it was an exercise to get us ready to think about collectively how we can participate in change for things that we know we all care about and are working toward. And so I am very excited to introduce Heather Hiscox, who's here with us. She is a frustrated change maker on a mission to change the way we can change the world. I have her book here. It's No More Status Quo, the proven framework to change the way we change the world. And I love that because I feel like most of us are here in the social sector because we see things that need to be changed and we have a drive and a passion to be a part of what that is. And so we're so very grateful to have Heather here. She's also the host and co-creator of Possibility Project, which has amazing episodes where she interviews amazing people on really, really important discussions about the work that we're doing here. So if that's not a resource that you've tapped into yet, I really encourage you to do it. They're also recorded, so you can catch up on previous episodes. And this is going to be a really informal Q&A kind of space for Heather to share with us her journey in her change work, through professional and personal challenges that come up when we're trying to do this. And so if you have specific questions, feel free to put those in the chat. You're welcome to come off of mute. We'll get started with Heather introing herself, and then we'll get into some good conversation. So welcome.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me. I am getting over COVID, so I'm part of that spring illness. So I have my two beverages ready. I have my cough lozenges, they're lozenges ready. So forgive me if I need to pause for a minute to, do my things. But I'm so glad to be here. Yes, I am all about change. I consider myself a frustrated change maker, and that's really the umbrella that covers all the different parts of the troublemaking that I am really involved in. Creating my framework to help organizations address challenges and problems and uncertainties and opportunities in new ways, because we're using a lot of status quo, really poorly designed skills in the sector to try to create impact. Those spicy and lively and nourishing and essential conversations and possibility projects fuel the way that I think about the world. the way that I show up to different spaces. And the book was really, my intention with the book was to make the framework and the stories that I've been collecting over the years accessible to anyone, that anyone could pick it up, that maybe can have the institutional support to hang out with me, the financial ability to hang out with me. Wanted to make it where anyone could pick it up and learn about my why, the why behind the framework. Lots of, ranting in the early part of the book of what I think is messed up and how I think we got here. And then about 70% of the book is about how we can be different. What are the different strategies with illustrations and examples of what it looks like in real life? So it feels less intimidating, it feels less untouchable and impossible. It's absolutely possible to change the way that we change the world. So that's what drives my work. Yeah, I'm happy to be here with all of you. It's my first meeting, so I have to keep coming to more and more.
We hope you do. We love it. So my
Yeah.
first question, and this is a question to you, but also really a question to everybody in the group. And so feel free to put your answer in the chat. I work with primarily newer organizations just starting, where the people starting it see something specific in their community they want to work toward, and they have this drive and desire to do that. And then they get into the structure of how all of this works. And I feel like I'm constantly Debbie Downer and being like, okay, now that you're here, this is what you're participating in. And so I'm curious for you and your work in this sector, when was it that you realized, oh, the way we do a lot of these things isn't working for all of us? And the same question to all of you, though, that if you've been in this work for a while, was there a moment where you're just like, wow, it is so much harder to get done what we need to get done than it should be?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, so many times. And I thought in the beginning it was like my experience was unique to that organization or my role. And then I would change to another organization. I was like, oh crap, it's here too. And I'd change again, I'd be like, God damn it, it's here too. Like, what is happening? And so I just started seeing a pattern and I just started noticing that I always kept like emerging in a certain role of like this troublemaking role of always asking, like, why do we do it this way? Why are we creating a program and we're never engaging the staff that will actually administer the program, like that will actually lead the program and be in community? Why are we not including community members who we think we're going to influence and change and impact with this program? Why are we not engaging all different stakeholders around policy decisions and processes and how we work internally and externally? How are we ever actually going to get there? And I didn't know that I was using the language of co-design. I didn't know that I was talking about liberatory design or, futures design. I never was trained in that. I mean, that was not my background at all. I did not go to college for that, none of it. But I just found myself repeatedly noticing these massive gaps in participation and inclusion and empowerment and respect that was happening inside and outside these organizations. And I just saw, that whole definition of insanity. If we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same results. So I just started, that's where the framework started, was challenging the status quo and saying, well, this doesn't work. What else is out there? Well, that wasn't designed for social change. How do we tweak it? Well, that's, pretty inequitable. That's really ableist. That's really this. I just kept hitting against these guardrails of challenges and challenging it further and challenging it further. So yes, if any of you feel the way I did, you were absolutely not alone. I think I just got fed up pretty early after that experience again and again.
So, what do you think within you drives not only your ability to see it, to acknowledge it, to name it, the things that you can look back and say, gosh, this is really just keeping us in a really bad place? But what else within you makes you feel confident and ready to say and do something different, whether it's writing a book, whether it's starting your episodes, whether it's redesigning the services in your consultancy? What do you think within you is what gets you motivated to do something?
I think it's my love of questions and answers. I think it's my love of hypotheses. I've always been so intrigued by research and not even just standard research. I love how people right now are really challenging just the definition of research and how we ask questions and how we learn. It's just always fascinated me from an early age. I've always been so interested in, if we have a question and it's connected to these systems and structures and deeper meaning and significance and humanity. How do we get to those answers? Like, how do we really learn in different ways? And I think I've just always been an insatiable and curious learner. Honestly, it sounds simple, but I've just always been like the why? Why do we do it? Why do people respond in this way? What are these structures here for? Who created them? Who designed them? And I think that's a lot of the work that I do now is like this stuff didn't appear on like alien spaceships or like on tablets from on high. Like humans created this. Humans created philanthropy and grant writing and how foundations are structured and how nonprofits are structured. And we're seeing for the awful that it is the absolute destruction that's happening right now to our sector with great intention, but how it was designed from its inception was with deep and great intention. So if we don't understand where that all came from, and we don't understand that we have the power to challenge and change that those systems and structures can be redesigned at the smallest and largest levels, we're going to be missing those thinking opportunities to really challenge it. So I think that's where mine comes from. It's just this belief around hypothesis testing. What if we do this? What happens? What if we do this? What happens? And this belief that we can redesign, we can reimagine what's possible.
You have to believe it. We can redesign.
Absolutely. Yes, we can.
Yeah, these are not prophetic practices that we're just following blindly till the end of time, right? So, okay, here's another question for you. And again, for the larger group, feel free to answer in the chat. When we're thinking on maybe a meso level, right? Maybe not micro as individuals and maybe not macro as sort of the whole systemic part that we're in, but organizationally, you work with organizations, you come in, you help them acknowledge these things in their organization and make changes. And for all of you working in organizations, regardless of your role, maybe you are the leader of the organization, or maybe you're a couple levels below the leader, or wherever you are situated. You talked about being really curious about how something came to be. So for all of us, what type of effort needs to happen in our roles, in our organizations to find out how we've come to be, and how do we structure where we want to take that and move it into the future? Like, and where do you see things kind of breaking down or falling apart in the process of that?
Yeah, great question. I mean, the pause framework, there's 5 steps. I couldn't help myself. It is an acronym. And I called it pause because I thought that was the first thing we needed to do as a sector was to just slow down. It was interesting in the chat earlier, so much of you were talking about with change, you're responding, you're reacting. That is what's expected. It's like, go, there's another fire, there's a problem. Like we're just sort of trained with this. It's traumatic reactivity to needs in the community, to challenges in our organizations. So that's the first thing. Like you got to interrupt that process. You have to step back and say, how am I responding? How am I reacting? So that's really step one. How do I pause and think about, okay, what is the actual challenge at hand? Let me even name it. Can I even get clarity? Because so much of our reactivity is not based on even clarity around what the challenge is, what the opportunity is. And then who's impacted by this? Let's name all the different stakeholders. There's going to be many. These one size fits all imaginative solutions we come up with often don't work because there's too many players involved. So who are all the different stakeholders? And then what do we know and what do we not know? I think in the sector and in our roles, especially the higher we get hierarchically, we're supposed to be leaders with answers. If we walked around all day saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, like we might start getting in trouble or like causing challenges or big questions within our agencies. But we have to do that as a sector and as an organization, say, what don't we even understand about what's happening? What do we not know? And what do we know? What do we have institutional knowledge, memory, experience, some data to really show what we know? Okay, well, the things that we don't understand, let's go engage our stakeholders to really have these empathetic, deeply connected conversations to understand this challenge from their perspective. And then let's design potential solutions together. And then before we put them in full action, let's try to break them. Let's try to break our actual potential solutions before we waste any time or resources or love or care or money, time, any of that into this. Let's really, again, co-design with our stakeholders what would actually create the deepest impact, and let's make decisions based on evidence. This is not someone's pet project. This is not a powerful board member saying, hey, you know what we should do? It's not a new team leader saying, oh, let's copy and paste this strategy from another location. It's saying we're actually going to make a decision because we have talked to 40 to 60 key stakeholders. We have tested the riskiest assumptions of this solution, and we have clarity and confidence that this is what we need to do. And that is game changing in this work because you feel empowered, you feel informed, you feel connected, and you've brought your stakeholders with you. So everyone feels like they have a role to play. It's not this weird change management approach of like, here's the logic model, here's the structure, here's your job, here's the KPI. We're going to measure you against something that's super unknown and not even well understood. Go. Like that just feels awful for everyone. It's really destructive to our cultures. So we have got to just slow down and work in these new ways. That's really what I help organizations learn to do is apply it to a practical challenge right then, and they get to feel the difference.
So for everyone on the call, if you'd like, respond in the chat, thumbs up or a yes or something. How many of you feel like you are supported in your organizations in seeing something that could be changed and bringing it to someone or starting that change on your own? How many of you feel like you have the ability and the support to do that whenever it's needed? Sometimes,
Yeah.
maybe not whenever, timing of it. That's my next question. What else? I do most of the time. Trust and respect, that's part of that dynamic that you have that. Okay. Sometimes. Anybody else? How many of you feel like you absolutely can't, right? Like things are old school. There is absolutely a hierarchy. You do not speak out of turn. The people in the organization are not interested in making any change because it's taken so long to get to where you are now. Old school, limited to scope. Okay, so within your lane, Megan, so maybe within your lane, but outside of other, maybe larger organizational things might be harder. Laura says not right now. People want change, but they don't want to be uncomfortable. Oh, I love that, right? The ideal is there, but when it comes to, okay, how do I now feel about participating in this change? So let's talk about timing. In your experience, working with all of these different organizations, helping them through the framework, helping them recognize and understand what it takes to move to change. How long does it take, right? And of course, larger ships take larger amounts of time to turn. But generally speaking, how long do you see it takes to really kind of work through the process? And B, are there better times than some to make it a strategy, to be intentional about it?
Great question. It takes as long as it takes, and that's that horrible "it depends" answer that, again, people don't want. I'm a very different consultant, so when I go to work with the organizations, it takes a really courageous leader to say, "I wanna do this," because I tell them, "I don't know what's gonna happen." I literally have no idea what's going to happen with your team dynamics because I work with teams. I don't know what's gonna happen with this challenge or problem that you want to address. We are on a learning journey. I do not know where it's gonna end up. We could generate an amazing idea that will just, elevate and do all these things. We can have an idea that you thought was great, and we're going to shut it down because it's not going to work. So in terms of timing, most of my teams have very, very clear signals about what solutions will actually work or not within 6 weeks. We think that we have to do these pilot studies for a year, that we have to form task force groups, that I do a lot of coalition work as well. So it's not just inside one organization, it's across entire agency groups. Usually, if we have people speaking the same language and they have a new way of learning and they learning collectively, it is like just fuel. It's amazing how the learning is just so accelerated. Typically, what it looks like is 2 days on site where we're working through every single one of the skills live, right then. They're talking to 25 stakeholders in the first day for 2.5 hours. They go out and divide up and talk to as many people. They're actually testing a potential solution on day two. It's a different rapid style way of learning. And then it's 12 weeks of coaching support. 12 weeks is kind of squishy, but it's coaching support to help them learn more. And I'm their accountability partner, and I'm their support and their cheerleader and their caregiver of like, this is hard, but I'm here. I'm here with you, and I'm your advocate to your leaders. I'm the one that's going to negotiate and do the motivational interviewing techniques to show them how their leadership is failing you. That is also one of my roles. So it takes time, but it's like you go slow to go fast. That's why I love the methodology, because it's really pausing to learn these new skills to work differently. And then the outcomes are just hyper accelerated. And so people love that. And my team members, I just got a call from someone who was at a training 7 years ago. And she held up this workbook that I do not even have anymore. It's probably like deep within Google Docs somewhere. And she was like, I've never stopped using this. For 7 years, I've been using this. And that's what I hear again and again, is it just makes sense. Why would we build without engaging people most impacted? Why would we make decisions as an organization or as leaders without the evidence to actually back it up? Why would we wait a year to see results when we can do this in a different way? So there's ways to get started without imagining you're doing this massive transformation of the entire culture and organization. It can start with one question.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat. Would you be able to give an example of one of your teams and the change you were working toward, just to kind of really help people visualize kind of what it looks like?
Yeah, I was working with a state bar association, and it was a state bar across an entire state. And so it was a bunch of attorneys and people across their state, and they were looking at some policies that were passed years ago that were impacting their ability to collaborate across counties, across cities. And their ultimate goal was to increase access to legal services to all residents of that state. So we work collectively to really understand what are some of those challenges. And one of the things we hit was some of the laws needed to change. And so there was a lot of deep understanding and connection with policymakers and people that would be involved in passing new laws. So that was one part that sort of grew out of that original question, was we have some laws to change, and how are we going to go about doing that? The other thing that was fascinating was that their existing and current members were deeply frustrated with the application and renewal process that happened year after year. And they were saying it's so frustrating and exhausting to go through this paperwork, and you're collecting all this data and you're asking all these questions in these lengthy forms. Are you even using this stuff? Why do we have to do this? It's such a drain on our resources when we could be better serving community members. And so they changed the application and reduced the time that it took to use it by 80%. And so that just maximized across the entire state hours and hours of time that people then got back to do the work. And then it started to making this reciprocal relationship with their members that didn't exist because they were the power broker. They were the power holder, right? If you want to do this work, you have to get our stamp, essentially. You have to be a formal partner. But they were recognizing how they had abused their power in many ways to control the experience of those partners, which whom they really wanted to partner. And so it was really, it just opened up all these different channels. And I have a visual that I sometimes represent from this one project, because I have a circle that's like a nexus at the center of the image. And I have this web of learning that just shot off of it in like 8 to 10 different directions of changes that this one agency could make to serve their goal. So that's really what the change can look like. That's just one example, but there's many. We start at that nexus, and then this web of learning emerges.
That's cool. It's really cool. And I I want to acknowledge that you guys, I sent Heather a list of like questions to talk about. I haven't asked a single one of those. These are all totally random. So
We're good.
um
We're good.
I'm gonna pause right now to see if there is anybody who wants to ask a specific question. Anybody want to put it in the chat or come off mute? I don't want to dominate all of the questions. I have a million and I could talk to Heather all day about them. I know the
Yeah.
topic's kind of broad, right? Like we're not talking about some super duper specific thing. So really feel free in the thoughts that are being elicited as you're picturing in your specific situation or your organizations, if there's anything coming to mind that you'd like to ask. The next questions I have are going to really focus on the micro level, right? The individual level. And as people are potentially thinking about what they want to ask, um, I ask people all the time. I have subcontractors that work with me in different groups that I show up to participate in some sort of collective change. People who aren't interested in it, like why? Right? Like why? Why do you feel comfortable in how this work happens when I can tell you how it doesn't happen, right? So, like, where is that threshold that someone's like, I'm cool with all of this, I'm going to keep moving forward in the same way, to, okay, this isn't right. I want to do something about it. And I think within that realm exists privilege, experience, different levels of understanding. And so I'm curious in your experience, both personally, like to go up and be like, I'm going to write a book or I'm going to start something on my own is a lot, is heavy. And not everybody is built to do that, right? Not all of us are showing up writing books because, well, a lot of people are writing books, but they're not always great books. But like, what is it within each of us that what are we all looking for to be the person that we think needs to participate in making the change? I know for me, I was talking with another consultant the other day, and one of my goals from the start of the work that I've been doing as a social worker, as a grant professional, as someone starting a nonprofit support business is I don't think nonprofits should be the ones hiring me. I think funders should be the ones hiring me. I think the work should be flipped completely. And in my mind, I've been building this foundation to have the credibility to show up to funders. And she said, why? Why are you thinking that way? You're as credible as the next person. Just show up and tell them. But there's something I'm telling myself that I'm not experienced or trained or ready enough to create change in that kind of way. So what do you think it is, both for you, but like, what do you see from other individuals, that barrier that gets them from seeing themselves as a change maker?
Yeah, I think I'm going to read you a quote that drives my work. It's the final words that close my book. And I think for me and how we have to think about change is elemental. So I'm going to read you a quote. It's Octavia Butler. So any of you that are Octavia Butler fans, you'll be like, okay, here we go. From Parable of the Sower. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. And then it ends with God is change. And for me, that means like everything that is change. So I love that. I mean, when I first read that, when I was reading all of Octavia's works, like it just hit me so strongly. I think we build up change to be so big and so overwhelming and so difficult and so challenging. But I think when I say change is elemental, my first thinking about change is like the wind and the trees, the rising of the sun, the rising of the moon, the changing of the seasons, our inhalation and our exhalation. I know it sounds kind of woo-woo, but stay with me. Like everything is changing all the time. It is truly elemental to all of our existence. So it's what connects us. It's what drives us apart in some ways, but it's the key to understanding ourselves, to understanding each other, and to understanding the world around us. So that's one element, is I really appreciate it for what it is, and it is everything. So it doesn't get put into this nasty bucket where it's like, I don't like change. I get it. I don't really like change either. I like things steady as you go, like the next person, but that's not where the transformation lies. If it's steady as you go, you're not going to have those growth opportunities. It's just the truth. I think as individuals and as change makers, we think that the change has to be huge. And I don't know if it's coming with age, experience, but I'm under no delusion that my work is shifting the entire sector or that my work with that one state agency is going to truly make sure that all people in that state had access to legal services, because there's a lot of other stuff going on there that I could not touch with my lovely framework. So I think there's a reality and a truth that I have adopted and integrated that I am going to show up every day not knowing the impact or ripple of my work, but I'm going to show up with my integrity, with the truth and space for lots of other people's truths to sit next to me and join me and to teach me, that I'm going to keep asking the questions. I'm going to be focused on accountability for myself and for others. And I'm going to just be open-hearted and open-minded to where the journey is going to go. So that's why the framework, I'm okay with not knowing how it's all going to work out and how the story will be written, because I know that it's always emerging. And I think that's true for us as individuals. It's us as, professionals, whatever that means, right, within our work. But I love Margaret Wheatley's quote that a leader is anyone who sees something is going on and shows up to do something about it. Like we're all leaders, we're all change makers. Any of us can have that. Another quote that I love is from Michael Bryan from Human Nature. He says, we're all designers. We're all designers, even if we don't think we have that title. If you create something from nothing, a program, a process, a policy, anything from nothing, you're a designer. And you have created now the future for other people by what you have designed. So if you deeply respect and care for those humans that will be most impacted by your creation, that's going to result in a very different impact. If you do not respect, do not know, do not talk to, do not include, do not empower, do not honor individuals and entities that will be impacted by what you create, you're going to create a really disrespectful experience. And we see that all the time. So I think we have to have grounding principles that lead to how we show up to this work. And that's going to create those ripples. That's going to create that emergence that we all need to focus on. We just have to have that root. For me, it's love, but what's the root that from all our work stems? That's where the good stuff is. And it can be small, small change, or it can be big, big change.
I bet for a lot of people here, it's love too, starting from that and getting getting knocked along the way, but always
Yep.
remembering that that's where it comes from. We have a couple of questions in the chat that I want to make sure we get to. Um, how do you handle folks who are sticks in the mud, those within teams that can't or won't handle change? And maybe an example would be helpful, but like also just sort of generally like conflict, right? Like the human conflict that exists in these settings.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that question. I can say with 100% integrity that I've never lost anyone along the way. And I've been doing this a very long time. I have people that show up to my training with like the world's worst body language. It's like they cannot tell me enough with their body language how much they hate being there. Like crossed arms, zero eye contact. They just seem so frustrated. It's like, good Lord. Okay, hi, I see you. Thanks for the message. But by the end of day two of the training, they're like, I see this, I understand, I get it, it makes sense, this feels good. So, what's interesting about those sticks in the mud is I tell leaders, you can give me anyone on a team. You can give me someone that has worked there for 6 months and they are bright and shiny and full of such enthusiasm and inspiration. And they're like, why do we do this? This is cool. What if we try this? Have you guys ever heard of this? They're that person. And you can put them with someone that has worked there for 28 years who's like, we tried that in 1999. Don't even touch it. Or I don't like that. Or I'm not, that's never going to work. I love those dynamics because I deeply respect those individuals that have been there that long because that was a long time to hang in, first of all. And they have such deep institutional memory and relationships. Those people are powerful, right? They have deep connections to the mission, the community, your partners, your funders, your everyone. That is amazing. You have new folks who are amazing in their own right, right? They have some of that troublemaking spirit. They're asking those questions. They're bright, fresh perspectives. I love it. It's like let's connect those people. And what I do with teams right away is we do a lot of connection work as teams because what often holds us back as team members are our assumptions. We've built walls of assumptions where we just have created entire stories and narratives about our coworkers who we do not even know. And so we break those down and we get people to say, who are you? And as much as you feel safe and comfortable sharing, who are you? wow, well, who you are is really interesting and really connected to who you are and what you are and who you are and what you think about and what you care about. And already the team goes, all right, we all have these amazing superpowers. So they start to see the power of the diversity of this little team. My teams are 5 people or less. These are little teams. So they create like a connection in the get-go. And then what's lovely is they've never gone through this. So all of them are starting with me from step one. So they're learning a skill together from the beginning. No one is more knowledgeable. No one's done this before in most cases. So it starts with this blank slate, which I also really love. They're learning these new skills. They're directly applying it immediately. They're directly seeing results. They're having these integration conversations of what does this learning mean? We do a lot of reflection work. How do I feel about this learning? Where do I feel uncomfortable? Where do I feel stretched or pulled or challenged with my existing thinking? Okay, and I can share that with my team. And they get excited to like, we can brainstorm 40 different ideas. Okay, we can break a solution. Okay. Like it's just opening up the floodgates of permission to think and work differently. And that just brings people together in a whole new way. Like I've never seen it. You can see that's like what lights me up. It is so much fun. It's such an honor. And there is conflict and we work through it because that's normal and natural. There is disconnection at times, and I bring people back together. It's just a series and pattern of noticing and care and support and connection that I just keep bringing people back to that central question of why we're there and why they're there, why they care. And it just flows from there. So you can give me the grumpiest of grumpy. And I've also learned as a facilitator that I write stories for people based on their behavior, whether they intend it or not. So in the book, I share several stories about when I have made assumptions about individuals that I then have to disrupt and I have to acknowledge and challenge because it's creating a barrier between my connection with them, my support for them. And so it's being open. It's being open to that love and care and that learning journey. I think that's key.
And I bet there's people on this call that work on teams or work under leadership that understand the value of people having space to really check in with how a policy or a change or the work is being experienced. And then I'm sure there's people on this call that are picturing, oh yeah, like anyone on our staff meeting would ever be like, how do you feel about this particular thing we're talking about? And so I really understand the diversity. I'm running through all of that with all of the organizations I've ever worked for and worked in, and being like, well, that wouldn't work there, that would work there, that wouldn't work there. And these experiences are so diverse. But I see that becoming more and more of an understanding in places I haven't seen it before. And here's an example for everybody. Actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, so don't share this. But I was doing reviewing of proposals for the GPA Summit coming up in the fall as a volunteer reviewer. We're on a team, and the ones that I was assigned are really fascinating. There were things like public speaking and connection and facilitation and working through conflict that I haven't seen those sessions come up before. And people coming in and teaching grant professionals on your team, you know what? If there is conflict, you might have to be the person to step in and help facilitate. You might need skills in that because maybe the leadership isn't handling that very well. And we're all just working through frustration. So I hope that takes hold in more places, because I think your examples and your experiences show us that it matters and it really can make a difference. We have another question about boards.
Mm.
Working with boards across big change efforts. I know a lot of people probably like, oh, well, maybe our team is aligned, and then we take it to the board and then it all falls apart.
Oh, I'm already shaking my head. Same doing my board, shaking my head already. I do not like boards. I am not a fan of boards. I think the structures are whack. I think again, talk about something designed for whom, why, when, where, what is going on. I think board design is madness, that needs to be deeply disrupted and challenged. It's like for some of these people, how do they even get there? It's like what they have no lived experience. They have no connection to the community that's actually intimate or knowledgeable. And they're making all these decisions. Like I don't even understand it. So that's part of my work is people have said that what the pause framework allowed them to do is to tell their boss that their idea sucks in a nice way. So they can't just walk around to the board and be like, Mr. So-and-so, you have no clue what you're freaking talking about. They're not supposed to say that, but they can say, hey, you know what? you had this grand idea, and I'll tell you a quick story, and it's in the book as well. I had a board member, part of an agency, who wanted to create a community farm, and with the intention of like, okay, people that lower income, they live in it. They were telling people you live in a food desert, which I have heard multiple communities told they live in a food desert, and you talk to the community and they're like, I'm good. I have everything I need. You've told me I live in a food desert, so isn't that nice for you? But I don't. I'm good. Bye-bye. So that's a funny dynamic that I wish someone would tease out with me in the food justice areas. But he wanted to create this farm essentially, and he was a retired executive. He had this massive binder, had spent so much time on this idea, and just was attacking the executive director with this idea at this point, just causing a ton of trouble. And so we said, let's invite him to be a team member. Let's have him be on the team, and he's going to go interview community members. He's going to go test this with us. And long story is long, long story, but I'll shorten it that by the end of the learning, he actually asked to speak with my co-founder and I and cried and said, I am so embarrassed that I have had this one idea because every turn it was a no, 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 no. He couldn't receive that from the executive director because he thought he knew. But he finally, after multiple no's from multiple stakeholder groups, he could finally receive the no, that it was not an idea that would work. It was not a good use of resources. And he left the organization because he was so embarrassed. And he cried about it because he was like, oh no, what have I done? I've spent all this time and I'm just so mortified. I told all my friends and family that I'm building a garden and I'm awesome. So it's like he had an identity disruption. And it was not with love and care and respect because you don't create from power. Like his binder was what he cared about most, not the community. So what's interesting is the executive director then said, you know what? I'm taking this experience with me and I'm taking back my power. If any board member, community member, or funder ever comes to me again and says, you know what we should do? I say to them, I use a framework that saves us time and money and resources, and we only create what will deliver the greatest impact. Would you like to join me to investigate and learn to see if this is an applicable solution? If you want to join me, let's go. 90% of the people then leave at that point because they don't want to do any work. They just want to be the idea person and go back to their tea time or whatever they're doing. Now the funder, the executive director can negotiate in a different way and say, I don't just build anything. Your ideas are just ideas along with anyone else's. We have a process to run these quickly through a system to make evidence-based decisions. And those people that do want to hang in and they want to, that 10% that want to perform and they want to participate, amazing. Can you imagine their giving goes through the roof, their engagement goes through the roof. They deeply respect that team for the way that they work and operate. It totally changes the dynamic. So that's what I tell that story to so many of my leaders. Like, you have power. You do not have to submit. You do not have to go along. You don't get to just let this like ragged accountability run the sector. You get to have your power. And that's another reason why I love the decision making that's built into it. And that's
I
how you
love
can control your boards as well.
I love it. And you know what I'm picturing? I'm picturing taking that, blowing it up, and it be the framework that all of us on the grant seeking side show up and say to funders, listen, we have a framework and what you have presented to us is not benefiting our community. Um, why don't we share that with you? So that's awesome. I love that. We did have we'll probably close out with this last question. Unless people have a couple more, please put them in the chat and let us know. Talking about consultant change makers, bridging, different sides. And I feel like from my perspective as being a consultant change maker, the flexibility I have to design the way that I'm going to go rather than being put within a design that already exists. Do you have any insight to approach like what this massive pivot is happening right now? Like, where can we find inspiration and engagement and the research we need to know how we need to move forward with the organizations that we're working with?
Oh, it's so interesting. More people are like, Heather, we need you on the podcast because you know how to navigate uncertainty. It's like Yes, and none of us have seen what's happening right now. Like, none of us. I did not have a golden answer. I did not have, like, okay. What I would say and what is giving me hope right now is that all of us can play a role. All of us can have these different conversations. Um, I'll tell, I don't want to know if I want to tell you another story, but I think that we have to show up with the knowledge that we can influence outcomes. So for example, when I have a contract with a county health department as one of my clients, and they were just asking for all this data from a community project. This was during COVID. And I just said to them, why? Why are we collecting this data? What are you going to do with it? This is not even part of the grant. Like, why are you asking these questions out of curiosity and asking people to answer these questions? And they were like, well, I don't know, because we can. I mean, it was essentially like status quo. We always do it this way. We just make up and do whatever we want. It's fine. We have the power. So a lot of it was talking about power with them. That's a power move. That's a power play. Think about how you feel when you are asked from, a national funder to answer these ridiculous questions. Don't create that harm on someone else on another group. So it took me asking that question, and we stopped collecting that data. I was able to interrupt that pattern. As part of that same project, I guess I will tell you a story. It was CDC funded, it was millions of dollars, and I was a consultant contractor hired to work on the project. And the project was essentially to ask communities of color in our Latino and Indigenous communities around COVID to open up all of their relationship pathways to increase the acceptance of vaccines and of testing. And so I was like, that's extractive and not okay. Because why would anyone open up their community connections and relationships for you, a department that they do not trust and they've had negative experiences with since the inception of COVID and how the ways that vaccines and testing were rolled out, requiring documentation of citizenship and all of those other scary practices? It's not going to work. And you're not funding these groups. You're not funding community members. You're not compensating people for showing up. You are not going to get engagement. This is not going to work. So I will take the contract, but I am going to fundraise an additional $100,000 outside of this grant that will go directly to community members. That money will go straight to them. So I was able to leverage my power and relationships to go out of grant cycle, send a direct email to these different foundations and get cash. And then what I did is I took 25% of my contract and I hired 4 community health workers at $20 an hour, and they helped me administer the program. They were actually like on the ground, scheduling events, meeting with community. Anyone that attended our events and participated in any way got $50 gift cards. There was no, police force, any group even allowed within any vicinity of our groups. Everything was very safe for community. It was in locations of their choosing. We bought so much local food, paid for so much local music, paid for so many amazing artists to create murals and art activities. We supported so many activities for children. And all those community groups had to do was to send an email. On this date, at this time, we want this much money for this. And we said, okay, sounds good. Here you go. And we became a regranter, and all of that money went out. And those community health workers, all but one of them actually got certified. We paid for their certification to become certified community health workers, and they're now doing that as a profession. All of them have raised the amount of money that they're earning to support their families. Those relationships were transformed, where some of those community partners, when new grants came and new, usually white leaders from the community came to them and said, will you open your relationships? You have spent years and decades building trust and connection. Will you open them up and get someone to fill out our survey? They said, no, we won't do that. We won't participate in your grant. And if we do, we're going to need this much money. We need this much budget to support our dreams and our ideas and our programs. And those other groups came to me and were mad at me because I had messed up their grant. Because those community members felt empowered enough to say, no, I'm not going to play the game. I'm not going to participate. So I was able to disrupt the thinking of those funders. I was able to disrupt the thinking of that agency. CDC was like blown away by our results and outcomes, which really were head and shoulders above. And community members were like, yeah, this is what we want. This is what we want. We don't want these other strange extractive practices. So and I'm just one person. This was all an experiment. I don't know if any of this was going to work. So I think that's an example, and that's something that I hold on to for all of my future contracts. I have the power to use my power and my privilege and my position to say, you know what? My assumption is this won't work, and here's my experience why. Here's what I suggest. Are you open to trying it? We're going to test some hypotheses. We're going to test some assumptions. So I use that thinking when I reply sometimes to RFPs, and I attach the article I wrote for Stanford Social Innovation Review, and I take apart their RFP and tell them what should be different and better. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's my way of causing these disruptions within the system. We all can do that, especially now. We can ask these questions. We can challenge those power brokers. We can do the smallest things to cause trouble, that good trouble that John Lewis talked about, the good trouble. We all can do that, even in the smallest of ways. So that's what I'm thinking about now. It's like, what's the good trouble that I can continue to create and be an advocate and voice for other people that right now have to really lay low for their own safety and protection.
That's awesome. I love that example. That's makes me be like, oh my gosh, what else can we be building into these grant budgets to get really centering the people that it's serving beyond what we think the funder is looking for. So that's really cool. I love that. Heather, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here with us. I You are always welcome. Please come back anytime. Your next episode of Possibility Project is when?
April 24th, we are all going to be together and you're going to be on it. Woo woo.
Guess what, friends? April 24th, we more than grant writers,
And
community
best,
fundraising, and crappy funding practices.
we are
All
April 24th. Yes, we are 9:30. I want to make sure we get it 9:30 Pacific. I don't
so
have set up,
join
but
us. There's going to be some really cool people having really cool conversations. And if you can't join, follow up and listen in afterward. And you also just moved to a platform where like I give what, like $5 a month or something. It's been a labor of
I'm
love for all
Patreon.
these people. Yeah. So Patreon. So there, if you're so inclined, there's an opportunity to support the work that's going on and the conversations that are happening. And I highly recommend the book. I love it. Great thing to make notes in and to take with you. Um, so thank you so very much. We're going to move on to our final breakout. So to prompt all of you, oh, that didn't re-upload. There were goals here. I'm not sure why they're not showing, but we have a project we've started. We've been working on it for a couple of months. We're working on some letters to philanthropy. And what started as an idea to write a letter to philanthropy in conversations and understanding the status quo and recognizing where change happens. We understand that people consume information in different ways and process it in different ways. And knowing that talking about philanthropy and more money from philanthropy coming and supporting the work that's going on right now means the audiences are going to be slightly different, right? We're not just trying to preach to the choir. We really want to engage people in and around philanthropy in change, because philanthropy historically has not been great at showing up in their very best form. So we've at this point structured 3 letters with different tones, all the same message, but the information is a little bit different. The way that we're talking to the audience is a little bit different. And we would love, love, love your feedback on these letters. So we're going to open up 3 rooms based on the tone of the letter for you all to choose. And let me kind of walk you through. One of them is let's move forward together. It's warm, it's invitational, it's solution oriented. One of them is Dear Philanthropy, the storm is here. It's direct, it's unapologetic, it's accountability focused. And one of them is Stand for What's Right and Lasting. It's grounded, values-based, a more conservative appeal. And I will get those into the chat for you all together. This is the warm invitational one. I should probably write that. Whoops, that was sent to you directly, Megan. Sorry. Everybody, where's everybody? Okay. This is the, make sure it's open to everyone. The storm is here. Direct, unapologetic. And this one is accountability focused, more conservative leaning. So we would love your rooms to do a quick review, maybe a little discussion, and come back and share with us your thoughts, your feelings, edits. We also are really interested in the way we roll it out to be able to make it super accessible, super shareable. We're inviting in other partners like Crappy Funding Practices. We're going to reach out to community-centric fundraising. We're going to try and reach out to trust-based philanthropy, all of these groups who are already having these conversations to see if we can get the letters out as far as possible. But we're curious from you, when something like this comes to you, what's your engagement in it? Is it read it only? Is it read it and share on social media? Is it read it and share with your networks? Is it send it directly to a funder that needs to hear it? So when we come back, we'll kind of gauge from you how you think you would utilize it so that we can figure out our best launch and how it needs to get where it needs to go. So for those of you who have to hop off, thank you for being here. We're in here for another about 15 minutes until we close out. So we'd love to hear your feedback on the letters. And Megan, we're going to open up. Oh, our room's already happening.
Yes, the rooms are open, but they're select. They're named after each of the type of letter. So please join whatever that is calling to you most directly. And I'll put the links in the broadcast channel for the room. So feel free to jump to the rooms, but they're always in the chat.
And we'll take what, 7 minutes or so and then wrap up.
Put myself on a timer.
Nobody wants the warm letter.
Well, I mean, that's good feedback.
Oh.
Well, I don't see the breakout room options. Sorry.
If you go to your little more ... that should open up.
Sorry. Yeah. Thanks.
I'm going to join the warm invitational just in case someone feels like being warm.
Okay, and then there were two.
Nobody wanted the warm letter. That's good. That's cool.
I wonder who I went to. Okay, Laura's in the conservative one, so that'll be good as far as having somebody from the team. I think most people tend to drop off after the first like hour.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad. Just
Hey y'all. Quick question.
yeah.
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
So I have to run, I think, before the 30 mark, but I'm part of a CCF group in San Diego.
Oh, okay.
And I'm curious, like, because we've been doing some local organizing of like how are we responding as like as a community, both funders, nonprofits, government sector, local government, and are you all seeing this letter as something that will be like adapted to local context, or is it like a broad letter to everyone kind of thing?
Yeah, no, great question. And it's something we've been discussing. And Emily, feel free to chime in the answer as well. It- we have a lot of ideas and a lot of vision for what this letter can be. We know what our limitations are starting off just as a group, coming together when we can to do this stuff. So the initial goal is broad and general to the topic of philanthropy should be doing better, but we've rolled around the idea of partnering with whomever it makes sense where if there's an opportunity for someone or a group to say, hey, there are some really specific people we want this to go to, offering the ability for them to edit and tailor as needed, or maybe even offering the opportunity for it to come from more than grant writers if they need something more collective than from an individual person. So we are open to what it can become, but we don't have a really strong path for anything specific beyond like the initial rollout.
Okay, cool. So as we're continuing to like organize here and see what makes the most sense, would it be all right if I just shared this with our local CCF group, kind of kept them appraised of like where you all are at with it, and then like if as we get more clarity on like what makes the most sense here, we can just like kind of stay in touch of if this is a helpful thing, if they have feedback on how this could be used here, um, or yeah, I guess the real question is, can I share it with them? I guess
Yeah,
that's the
you know
question.
what, if you'd like to, with understanding that like we don't want it super spread until we launch it, but in the meantime, if it's just a small group and you all are really connected and you're like, I'd love to share it with them, we're happy to take their feedback too before everything goes out. You can keep up with us on morethangrantwriters@gmail.com, I'm pretty sure is ours, or make sure, because we'll follow up this session with another newsletter with some of this information and you can respond to that. So just keep in touch with us and let us know what's going on your end, and we can make sure that things are aligned.
Great. Yeah, because I guess the question to me is going to be like, at what point does it make sense to tie it to like a bigger national collective versus the more targeted approach? And so I think, yeah, that's great. I'm not sure if or when I'll follow up, but knowing that this is an option and that we are working the same problem from different angles is really great.
Awesome, that's sweet. Jake, are you in the Mighty Networks for CCF?
I'm not right now.
You should get in there.
I know, there's just so many
I know,
networks.
I
So
hear you.
many
It's one more
ones.
thing, but like that's one way you can connect with us too for like asynchronous communication or whatever.
Okay.
Several of us are on that Mighty Networks already. So.
Okay. That's a good call. Maybe this is a good impetus for me to jump in there. All right. That sounds good. Thanks, y'all.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for hopping back into this room to check on that, and be super interested to hear what the San Diego chapter is thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be in touch.
I'm bringing everyone back now.
The best thing to take for like crooked necks.
Oh, maybe heat? Like, do you have like a little warm pack?
My husband has a Theragun, but I'm just like, I don't really know like where it starts. I know where it's radiating, but
I'm a big Pilates person, like stretching out, like actually like just rolling around on the floor and not looking at the computer.
I should like foam roll on it.
Oof.
Well, it's because my 4-year-old ends up in my bed with his face next to mine all night. And so then I'm like altering the position I'm in so that I'm not getting toddler breath in my face constantly. Are we all coming back? Is this everybody? I know a lot of people had to pop off. I don't want to. The rooms are closed though now, right?
People are still coming back.
Okay.
They're closing in 6 seconds.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Now we're all back.
Okay, cool. Welcome back, everybody. So nobody went to the warm, inviting letter room, which I mean, maybe we don't use it. Maybe we have 2 letters and nobody wants to nobody wants to warmly invite anybody to be a part of this because we need it now. Everything's on fire. So that's good to know. I would love to hear any feedback. We're gonna capture it in some form or another. Do I need to write actual notes down or do we have somebody who's gonna, because mine will be handwritten on a piece of paper. Do we have a electronic version? Someone can do that.
I think physical notes would be good. I'm on share screen mode.
Well, let me get my paper. All right, feel free, chime in. You're welcome to come off mute. You're welcome to put it in the chat. You're also even welcome. You have access to the letters. You're welcome to put feedback or information in the notes in the letters or anything like that. But let us know. What do you all think? Okay, so someone definitely share on social media. Dawn added notes to the storm letter. Oh, that the group. Okay, cool, 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 cool.
I took some notes based on our small group about which one were we? We were like the aggressive one. The storm is here, I think we were. Focus on unrestricted funds. That some of these funders want to shift what's bright, shiny, and new, but they need to stay with what's like they can't always keep funding new programs, new this, new this. Some of it's just like the stuff that works and has worked since the 90s, and like we still need it in our communities to protect folks. And don't abandon their old priorities. Don't like get so excited to we have to respond that they like leave off their old initiatives that they were supporting and fling people around those ways. And what could happen after this. So I was saying if a foundation, I'm thinking about our community foundation, might look at the checklist and be like, we're doing that, we're doing that, we're doing that. Okay, I'm good. Bye-bye. And they kind of disengage. But like, what's the post, like what's an implementation strategy post letter that keeps deepening these conversations? Because there are larger conversations about the sector, like there's a reactiveness and responsiveness, but what's like the larger, deeper conversation to be had? And what's their advocacy role that we need them to potentially take on? And are there like grant conveners that could hold conversations or working groups or things like that? That's what I took away. I don't know, the rest of the group, whatever I might have missed.
Okay, cool. That's good. Yeah, we were trying to also link to, because we're not planning to lead them, right? If they want to follow something to do more, but connect them to trust-based philanthropy, connect them to the groups that are actively working toward that on a regular basis. And so part of it was to have those resources exist within the letter for them to also kind of pick their own adventure on how they move forward. Inside philanthropy. I'm not sure if there's we've started a list of who to reach out to. I'll have to make sure Inside Philanthropy is on that. David Callahan.
One thing that I've said in a couple of my breakouts now is that there was a moment that got brought up that like MacArthur, they went on like LinkedIn and talked about their strategy and like we're just candid that they didn't know if what they were doing was right or enough. And there was just communication there. And I would just love to see funders communicating in a way that's not, our board has approved this press release about exactly what our funding priorities for the next year are. Like just some more like engagement, which I guess is kind of in the letter, like talk to experts, but like we're all, we all got connected because there's like a public engagement that's a part of this movement. And I think that the grantors, those voices are missing, the funders are missing from those conversations.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I think about these letters and these initiatives coming from the different groups are likely to already reach people who already care. And so how do we get to folks like the small family foundations in a community that just suck, right? They're not engaged in a larger philanthropic group. They don't have a clue what participatory grant making is. And like, you just need someone who just filled out their application to be like, listen, I need you to read this letter because for the love, we can't do this with you anymore kind of thing, So like, we're hoping that there's an opportunity maybe at some point for individual people who are not going to, I'm not going to send that to them on my own. I'm not going to have that come from my email, but like, can I ask somebody else to send it on my behalf directly to people? And somebody was just asking us about that before the breakouts, if there's a way to tailor some of these to certain people. And so we're playing around with that idea and also would love some input from individuals on what that could look like, what that could mean, maybe as like a phased rollout kind of thing, like big general letter. And then folks can let us know if they have some people they really want it to read it. Because that's, man, right now I'm doing with our local GPA chapter, a statewide research project on philanthropy in Missouri. And so we as volunteers have pulled all of this research together and we're showing up in these philanthropic spaces and conferences to be like, here's the deal, right? This is how many dollars exist in the state of Missouri in philanthropy. This is how many dollars are actually going to organizations. This is how many dollars are going to organizations in Missouri. This is how many dollars are going to organizations outside of Missouri. This is how many dollars are happening in rural areas versus our metro area. So like we've been able to compile all that and we're going to show up as a group rather as individuals and say, this is what we know. This is what you need to do and see what happens. Also our idea, and you can let us know what you think about this, is the plan is to have just sort of a landing host spot, maybe on our website, where all the letters are available. It's sort of you pick your adventure. Like you pick the one with the description that makes sense to you, because we didn't think people were going to read all of them. It's quite a burden to absorb that much information. And then they have a choice which one they want to share. And so we really wanted to acknowledge criticism that comes from these sorts of initiatives are always like, well, I agree in the thing, but I don't like what you said, right? Like crappy funding practices is saying good things, but they're being rude about it and they're calling people out. So we really wanted people to focus on the message, not the delivery. So we wanted to have different ways to deliver it so that it really is pulling in people who are just ready to be a naysayer. Any other feedback would be great. We're hoping to get it out by the end of the month because information is changing quickly. If you want to be a part of it or provide more feedback, you're welcome to email us. We'll also send this information out. We always do follow-up newsletters to our sessions, so that'll be coming out for anybody that's on our list or has ever signed up through Zoom. You'll have access to that. So we'll let everybody know when they come out. Oh, lastly, we are planning our summer session. Right now, it looks like it might be a two-part kind of thing. We might adjust it a little bit. We have a lot of really cool ideas in designing the perfect grant application. And we would love people to come and participate and share their thoughts on what the perfect grant application looks like. We've talked about making it more of like a day-long work session because there's so much to cover, or maybe a two-part session that's a little bit shorter. So be looking out for that information because we're really excited about what's coming out. there. All right. That's it for us. Again, Heather, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to everybody who's joined and all of your input. We really do listen to it and we use it, and because we're doing this all together. And if you have any questions, you can reach us through email or on LinkedIn. And that's it. I hope you all have a great week. See you next time.